This week we're joined by Kevin Fisher, President of IQUW Underwriting and former Chairman of Guy Carpenter UK.
With decades of industry experience and a recent transition into underwriting, Kevin brings a unique perspective on leadership, risk, strategy and transformation.
I'm James Potter.
I'm Ian Anson.
And welcome to Virtual Lunch. Well, thank you, Kevin, for joining us on our podcast. It's great to have you here, and I'm sure people will be interested in your views on the world and what you've been up to. I suppose, firstly, tell us a bit about yourself, what's happened in the world of Mr. Fish.
Okay, well, pleasure to be here, gents. I've, as you know, I don't do this. So,
Nor do we, by the way.
I don't know how you persuaded me to do it. Anyway, my younger years, I was a very, very keen sportsman. I've had the pleasure of playing, most sports, and I think a lot of that's shaped my my views on life and people. My father persuaded me when I was 16 that school probably wasn't necessarily the journey I was going to lean into, and he suggested I went up into a recruitment office in what was then, or is still, the Monument. I suspect it's gone. This is 6 years ago.
It's probably our office now.
Yeah. So yeah, or a sandwich shop.
Yeah.
But, I left, home to go and have an interview. Came back home. Father was standing in the door asking me, how it went. The interview was just a generic recruiter, and they phoned up to say there was a job going to a company called J.H. Manette's, which got consumed by Aon in the purchasing rounds of many decades ago, and the role was for a claims technician, which didn't mean anything to me. My folks weren't in the industry, so nor anyone in the family. So I went up, had an interview, which is very different, I dare say, to the interviews that occur now. It was an interview around rugby, football and golf. They never even mentioned what the job was. I went home and my dad was waiting for me and just said, how do you think it went? And I said, I've absolutely no idea, but they sure as hell won't be giving me the job. And he said, why is that? And I said, well, they didn't even mention what the job was. And he literally stood there and said, well, you might be interested to know they've already phoned and offered you the job.
Wow.
So I sort of went to bed that night. My mum wanted me to carry on school. My dad was, I think you should just get out and find a path. And I went to bed that night and thought, do you know what, I'll sleep on it, which is something I've sort of stayed with most of my life when I'm not sure on things. And my view when I woke up was the same as it was when I went to bed, which was, if I was going to reapply for this job in 2 years' time, post A-levels, what was the point? I wasn't gifted enough to have gone on to further education, to have studied for a degree of any relevance. So I took the plunge. So that's how I got there. As I said, so that was 1981, April. I was, some would say, still the same, but wearing a very ill-fitting suit with brown winkle pickers that my dad had bought me, which would have fit when I was 21, but I was 16, turning 17.
What, you'll grow into them?
It was that, yeah. So I wouldn't want to see what that picture looked like, but it's been an amazing journey, full of fun. It's exciting and terrifying at the same level, but I've been lucky enough to work for great companies around great people. Learned a hell of a lot. It's helped me become probably who I am, whatever that is, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's something I would recommend for anybody. I think our industry is utterly remarkable, and I'm not sure we do give ourselves enough credit in the way we sell our industry.
I agree, by the way. I think it's an amazing industry where you can, it's not just about car insurance and house insurance, which I think is the
You did
popular perception. But I mean, look, what's the insurance industry meant to you? As you commented, you've met great people. What else has it done for you?
Well, when I look back, it has. These are my most formative years. When you're 16, leaving school. I think it's been an incredible learning journey, not just in sort of academia in terms of the business and what I think and hope I've learned, but the mixing around thousands of people, both clients and brokers, both competitors and people you work with, and to look back on many of those friendships that this industry has given me is everything. I think as you get more successful in this industry, it's all I've ever known, so I can't count for others, but it takes you away from a lot, from families, from friendships that I had, in my early years, in my teens and the rest of it, and you to some extent grow apart because you start travelling and you're in at 8 and you're leaving at heavens only knows when, and doing dinners, and so you give a lot up, but it gives you a lot back.
You build lifelong friendships, though, don't you?
You do. I mean, yeah, it's probably a bit deep, maybe, but they're a lot of the friendships you have. They're transitional. I'm not someone who's spent a life coming in going, I must make new friends today. I'm not. I mean, friendships happen, but when I have them, I value them.
So, could you just explain to us a little bit, especially for the younger listener, back when you started your career?
That's everybody. For me, unless you're putting this into some homes. We
can definitely pipe it in.
I'll send a link to my parents. They might be interested. But to the younger listeners, could you just explain what the insurance market was like when you walked in? And you've talked a bit already about the friendships that you've formed, but I'm really interested to hear about some experiences that you had early, what the market was really like as a place in 1981. And also, if you could touch on, early experiences of leaders and people that you met in the industry, and how those kind of friendships have maybe evolved your view on leadership or contributed to how you view yourself now.
Yeah. Well, the city of London in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I'll probably need to be very
Discuss.
careful how I phrase this. Vastly different to what this next generation of industry, future leaders looks like. This is going back. Well, you won't remember, you will, but Thatcher's sort of march into the city, where people like me were being just pulled out of school and given a chance. If that was me now, I wouldn't get a job.
Yeah.
Which is something I've probably neither forgotten nor undervalue. I think we do many things right in this industry. I think there are people that will be lost by the fact that we've gone way more into a road of just fundamentally looking to hire grads. They're exceptional, many of those that I've worked with. Fantastic people, super bright, but smarts are measured in many different ways, in my opinion, and a sort of systematic memory test within a schooling or university environment is not necessarily smart.
Streetwise as well as
well, it has relevance, right? Yeah. Intuition, I think, is but it's difficult, isn't it? I'm a great believer in all of the above, and let competition work its way out. So
that's probably your sports mentality from the early ages.
Quite possibly. If you're good enough, you'll find a way. And I'm not sure I don't want to do disservice. I think I view academia as an elite sport. If you're good enough, then you should pursue it. If you're not, you'd be better off, in my humble opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right, but in looking at a career and building something, rather than just pursuing a degree that, to be honest, is in many cases, or some cases, is relatively meaningless when it comes.
Not relevant.
Becomes less relevant as you build a career in certain formats of financial services.
How do we? So this is flicking ahead, but it's quite an interesting point. Insurance, from what I gather, in the 80s and maybe in the 90s, was like maybe a fairly nepotistic game. If you knew somebody, you could get a phone call, you could get in. We fast forward to now, and we're in a space where talented people, young people, leave school, or they go to university or whatever, but every entry-level job that comes up, you're getting inundated with thousands of applications, often written by AI, screened by AI, then going for HR. We are, all of us at this
That's
table.
another reason I wouldn't have had a job.
Yeah, but I think it's a serious issue though, not just for the talent, but also for the businesses, right? Like how do we as an industry actually, not attract the right talent, but find the right talent, when we're living in a space where, those face-to-face conversations, telephone calls are so much harder to get now for the people that are applying.
Yeah, look, as I said, I don't want to bemoan parts of our industry whose job it is now to bring talent in I hate saying this, but back in my day, people hired people. I find it positively revolting that future employees are initially tested down a TV screen or a series of questions filled in.
Multiple guess.
It just doesn't say, it's not human.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you get to know the feel of someone without sitting in front of them and seeing whether your hunch on them is correct. And you have to have something that's, when you're hiring people, that for me it was, if you assume all things are relative. I mean, clearly if you take a scientist, a math genius out of Cambridge or Oxford, you meet him and he can look you in the eyes and make you feel good about his possible ingestion into the company, then it's easy. But there are a lot of soft skills that people still need. This remains and has been a people business in the 40, I think I'm in year 46. And in many ways the industry's changed, but in a lot of the soft ways it hasn't. If I don't have an ability to sit in front of you to, when I was in my prior life, to convince you that I'm someone you want to do business with, my intelligence or lack of would appear to be at that point irrelevant.
I mean, look, I highly respect the whole, face-to-face hiring thing. As someone that probably, certainly on the, senior side, all the way down really, I get to meet most people within Rockstone, and I think my barbecue test still stands quite strongly in our organisation, because actually, you do spend a lot of time together, and I think what's the phrase? It takes one drip of oil to ruin a ship's water supply. And I'm very much focused on making sure I don't ever ruin the water supply. And look, we sometimes get it wrong, but we're quick to realise. But I think quite rightly, as you point out, having that face-to-face interaction and feeling that X factor, whatever that may be, and the softer skills do stand out quite strongly when you have face-to-face interaction, and just to get to know people, right? Because how can a 50 question and answer set give you whether you want to work with that person or not, or whether you think it can work within your ecosystem or your team or not. So big believer.
Which goes back to sort of how I framed it earlier, right? I think that bringing people from all walks of life, different family backgrounds, different ethnicities, and putting them into a place where they can all compete should be the key fundamental role of employers.
Yeah.
And then not setting people up to fail. So helping people to get better, but teams are made of inherently different people, and unless you're in a team of one, you rely on the skill sets of people in a team, whether you're, whichever your favourite sport might be, but I'm trying not to run down the road of sporting analogies, but you rely on the man to your left and the man or lady to your right, and I think that's an essential part of the ecosystem of being a human.
Yeah, I mean, we make reference to, obviously, our team racing driver. When you think about it, a pit crew is only as good as the weakest member, right?
Sure.
And, I think you're always striving to do better.
There's
and
not much use if the tyre falls off, is it?
Exactly
In a
right.
pit lane. So,
No.
yeah, bang on.
Kevin, talked about, obviously, still a people business, importance of getting people in, the right people, face-to-face process. I'm really interested in your early years and your first encounter with somebody that really shaped you as a leader. Could you just describe the first time you came across somebody that really helped you elevate to a new level?
When you're much younger, you don't get access to you didn't in those days, the chairmans, the CEOs that were running the companies or the businesses that you interacted around. So it was more around, at those points, the people that ran the desk, I guess, that would have been more visible. Leadership is multifaceted and means entirely different things to different people. And if it was that easy to lead platforms, we'd all do it. Leaders are, you have people who are ruthless, who pay well, that entices people, but it's probably more monetarily driven, and maybe longevity for those people isn't good, but it works for
the danger money works.
Well, but as I said,
Yeah.
I'm not getting into the weeds of what's better, what's worse. I think the point I'm going to try and make is, humans are invariably led, right? I mean, everybody has a boss, and you want to be led by someone, for me, that you respect, that gives you, treats you fairly, that enables you to succeed. And I think it's a much underused terminology, but actually doesn't make you being afraid to fail. It's okay to fail. You learn more in life when you lose than you do when you win.
I agree. You're never starting back at zero, are you?
If you only ever win,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you learn.
I had a great quote from my first boss in insurance, in my, I guess, maybe month one or week one, I can't remember exactly. But it was pretty much the first time I was given a slip or an endorsement to go into Lloyd's with. And my boss at the time, which is brilliant, I look back on this and I thank him for this, because I just think there's not enough of this, really. But he said to me, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear or not, but he said, I'll swear and then maybe I'll have to redo it. He said, don't worry about it. Anything you fuck up, I can unfuck up. So, but he gave me really early in my career confidence and a bit of rope.
Yep.
And yeah, he gave me the kind of braveness to try something. And I think talking about leadership and what he got back from me, I never thought I'd leave that company. And I only left when
For a
he offered
better,
me a
better
job.
leader, right?
And I'd been there 8 years. But it's true, right? He got back loyalty, and I was happy coming to work, every day for that person and that team.
Yeah, I've said to many of my former friends and colleagues that on the basis you're going to spend more time at work than you will with your family and friends, you better start with the premise that you want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think when that enjoyment runs out, that's probably the right time to move. For me, anyway, the journey was made easier by just being around really good people. If you hire better people who are smarter than you, it's a pretty good way to start. I mean, as long as they don't want to cut my legs off. But it never worried me. I wanted to add fundamentally bench strength to teams, and the greater breadth of that talent around diversity of thought and experience, it just makes you better. I mean, if you go back, to when I started, the platforms have been awash with males, who looked substantially like we did, and nobody thought twice about it. When you look back, it just feels wrong. But at the time, that's why it's very difficult to measure things in history. It's all we knew. It doesn't make it right, but it is what it was. And you see the changing landscape in Lloyd's and that's something we should celebrate. Not, and it makes everybody better.
I love what you said there. The one of my first observations about leadership that I had, maybe shortly before I was put into like a proper leadership position, was that where it had gone wrong, I'd noticed people maybe weren't brave enough to bring people in around them who could really challenge them. And I'm super proud of the management team in Rockstone now, because
Plug.
yeah, because it's very diverse, and I create also quite a few of the best people I work with now are women, and everyone around the table talked about it before, have different perspectives.
Well, it's nice that everyone's got a voice,
and
everyone's heard, and I think that creates a different way of life.
If you live in an echo chamber where everyone just thinks the same way,
it's not.
It's not going to be fun.
It's not sustainable, is it?
No,
for sure. So
you've had to make a bunch of big calls in your life, or certainly in your career. Sorry, should I say? What's the hardest decision you've ever had to make?
I think any time you leave, there's a leap into the unknown, and every time you're either promoted or moved up a level, you sit on boards, whatever, you get I certainly did, a sense of imposter syndrome, and I always get very nervous around some of the senior execs in the industry, because I always got concerned I'd be found out, whatever that means. But it's true. I think they have that as imposter syndrome now, but I think that's just a run-on of leaving school as early as I did. You tend to feel you might be inferior to the people you meet as you go up. So that's a challenge. I think retiring from from Guy Carpenter after what felt 26 years, I think, give or take, felt like a lifetime. Big decision to walk away. But then I don't get that fixated on it. There are visionaries out there. I don't profess to be a visionary. I'm comfortable in the moment. I see what I see. I act on that. I used to report into some of the CEOs at GC who would ask for 5-year plans, and we do the same in my current role. And my simple answer is a 5-year plan will be wrong. Why do we waste that much time on it? So that might be an insult to my critical thinking, but I've never panicked. I don't think any decision I've ever made, I've woken up and gone, I just shouldn't have done that.
I know you've given me a good segue to my next question, actually, because basically my other question I was going to ask you was, have you ever got any big decisions wrong, and what did it teach you about your leadership and style?
I don't think I can think of anything that was big. We're not in the life-ruining business, is it? We're not surgeons.
Thankfully.
You know...
you would make a good surgeon.
So I think you have to put our business into perspective. I think we are uniquely privileged to be in an industry that is, which is why I made the earlier comment, we don't do enough to sell what we do. If you are a 12-year-old looking at a career, nobody thinks about the insurance world, right? When you look at the effect our industry has on everybody's life, without it, the world stops. Obviously without capital, business it's chicken and egg, right? Can't start, but without insurance, they're not allowed to start. And it has a unique sort of part in the ecosystem of the global economies. And when you look at that, it's an extraordinarily exciting place to be. And the nature of capital that comes into our industry, whether that's in private money or whether it's in IPOs and into PLCs or ILS, it changes daily, and it makes our business incredibly exciting.
Can we go on that? There's a couple of things I want to go back maybe and speak about the imposter syndrome, because that's interesting. But going on this theme, no, I've had it. I think so. But it's talking about reinsurance. You started touching there on how interesting this market is, but the vast sort of tentacles of the industry throughout the whole sort of ecosystem. You've obviously got a unique perspective from your position that you've held in the reinsurance market. A lot of the listeners listening to this podcast, hopefully if anyone does, they might be younger, they might be in the industry, but they might be in a specific line of direct insurance, or they might just be coming into the industry. I'd love for you to just explain, give a high-level overview of the reinsurance market and how that infiltrates the whole global economy. And maybe, like you talked about different sources of capital, but I'd love to get your viewpoint on how you think that sources of capital might change, like what's emerging, what you're seeing in the reinsurance industry, and some predictions of how you think that'll develop in the next 10 years.
Okay. Well, let's start.
Start with
I can't answer too many questions at the same time. I think I'll tell you. I sat down with my son and daughter a while back, and they had some friends over, and one of them asked me about the industry, and you could see them sort of glassing over, and I turned around to one of the ladies in my lounge, and I said, let's start with 24 hours in the life of they would have been 17, whatever it was. And I said, you wake up in a home most likely owned by your mum and dad. What happens if the house burns down? Well, you buy insurance. So I said, there you go. So I said, when your mum and dad go and get a mortgage, the banks loan money. It's prefaced on needing insurance, because otherwise they're loaning an asset to buy a house. If it burns down, has no value other than the value of the land, right? And then I said, okay, so now you leave home, and then you go, right, now you're on the train, you're going to work, we're going to say it's in London, you're on the train. What do you think the train needs, right? So when you get off the train and you go to your office, en route you stop off and you go to your favourite coffee shop and get yourself a coffee and a bacon sandwich. What do they need? You then get to the office. What does the office need? And it was my way of, and then I said, and by the way, sometime during the course of the year you want to go on holiday, right? What does the plane need, right? I said, when you look at that journey, and it's simplified, but it wasn't to be rude to the kids, but it's just a really easy way of framing us as a business. It's absolutely remarkable. It touches anything and everything we do in the world. So that's how I've done it, tried to explain it to people that might be interested in a career in this. When you're moving into the sort of more macro piece of reinsurance, the ability for us as a community to rebuild back communities that have been devastated by whether that's wildfires recently or hurricanes or earthquakes around the world, again, is a unique responsibility. It's a responsibility, obviously, you own to shareholders and investors, but you owe that back to the people whose lives we can systematically change. And I think it's a unique privilege.
I agree. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I sort of think about what I like about the Lloyd's environment and things like that, and you just sort of think, oh, the London market, should I say? It's incredible, really, that you can sit there at a box or a desk or whatever it is, and all this bit, and I always sort of try and. I don't think brokers get the acknowledgement that they deserve a lot. That the fact that they will go out, travel all around the world with a beaten up briefcase or whatever, or slipcase or whatever, and bring back all this business from all over the world to bring to your desk in London.
Yeah.
I find that quite incredible that, literally you could have a risk from, literally A to Z of countries, Azerbaijan to Zimbabwe, and everything in between in any given
we
day.
don't write a lot there, just so.
So could you just explain for people a little bit about the role that, at a macro level, reinsurance plays through the cycle of the insurance market, and just explain to people what can in a systemic loss or a huge loss in the reinsurance market, how that can ripple through the direct markets?
The fundamentals haven't changed, have they? I mean, it is the spreading of risk to the many. If you look at sort of quite perplexing in some ways, but the insurance industry is capitalised to the tune of trillions. It passes risk into a reinsurance market that has now currently plus or minus $700 billion of reinsurance capital. The oddity is, when you're looking at what you're talking about macro, we are a supply and demand market. For all of the intelligentsia that goes on, if you oversupply any market, or at least in our business, if you oversupply a housing market, typically prices come off. We're no different. We're here to provide leverage to and the ability for bigger balance sheets to write more by laying off segments of that business and taking away some of the volatility that, in particular in the cat world, exists on their balance sheet. So it helps them smooth the results. That enables them to make other more diversifying bets, which again, from the sort of global consumer in the insurance world, is a good day, because we sell products to anybody and everybody all over the world. It's not just a one size fits all. So I think in that way, if you look at it, without the reinsurance market, the insurance product and its ability to supply catastrophe risk, because it's pretty prevalent to a lot of the businesses, though, right, would be mitigated, and that would be a bad day for the consumer. So I think that's how I would phrase it.
I just wanted to ask you about, you mentioned earlier on about imposter syndrome as you were coming through the industry.
It's the third time you've mentioned that.
Sorry, yeah. Well, no, but I think it speaks to a lot of people, I know myself included, but I think everybody experiences that at some point in time as they move up through companies or industries. And I think it's interesting to hear it from somebody in your perspective who reached pretty much, the pinnacle of an industry, and it might be surprising for people to hear that you had that. I wondered if you could just talk about if there was a moment where you felt you belonged at that level, or anything you did or advice you could give to people who actually might be walking into boardrooms for the first time, or even management meetings for the first time and are suffering for a bit of confidence.
They're easy words to roll out in our industry. They're spoken about a lot, but in our day, honesty, they're still relevant. I don't mean in our day, but you've got better phrases for now. But honesty and integrity remain key.
Have to be the top two.
And I'm not sure that will ever change. So it's okay to not know. I sit in meetings in my prior life as I do here, and if I don't know, I'll just ask. I think you get found out pretty quick when you're talking to people who are smarter on their subject matter than you are, if you're bullshitting, if that word's all right to use. So I think the phrasing of imposter syndrome never goes away. It doesn't. No matter how much you just learn, to be more comfortable with yourself as you get older. I'm who I am, and I'm okay with that most of the time. And so I think the fundamental values don't change. We're in an industry overwhelmingly where you have discussions with good people. If they are not nice people, I'm not too worried about it because I wouldn't be around them, to be honest. So I'll find someone, in my old life or here that you'll become more comfortable doing business with.
I think as you say, like just being able to ask questions. I mean, I reference when I don't understand. It's like I can't remember. I think it was a famous actor or something sort of said, "Talk to me like a 2-year-old." So I think just having that confidence to say, "I do not understand. Please, can you explain?" is probably one of the strongest things you'll ever get, because actually people don't mind explaining. They prefer you to ask rather than make it up.
Yeah, you learn every day, don't you? I'm trying to think of the modern sort of way of phrasing it, but talk about people being comfortable in their own skin. But I know academics, whatever, put labels on things now. Imposter syndrome being one of them, but I'm not sure it does that justice to that innate feeling of you're not going to be quite good enough. And I'm sure that's no different even in other facets of life, right? You're always worried that you'll find someone who's just so much better than you. You'll be cast off.
Yeah,
I think that's just a
feeling. I think you're okay, Ian.
Yeah. It's a common fear, isn't it? I suppose if you ever meet anybody who doesn't have any of that, then they're probably a sociopath or a narcissist.
But there's a few of them, aren't there? But look, as I said, good on. I'm not here to criticise people. I think I start by trying to be the best I can be.
That's what a great lesson that is, right?
Great statement.
The rest, we'll figure it.
We'll find its way there.
Yeah, but I think as well, like for somebody in your position, just to hear you say, like, it's completely fine not to know everything, isn't it? And to ask questions always still, because we live in a world of specialists, don't we? And in all of our companies, there's specialist units, and it would be a problem if they didn't know a lot more about their area than we did, right? So,
Sure.
I think for me, at least, like learning to accept early the fact that most people I meet will know more about me, more than me in their subject, and that's completely fine, right?
I'd like to ask you a question, if I may, because it's one that we've debated.
Question.
Well, we've debated over the years, over various lunches and coffees and what have you, not virtually. So M&A is an interesting one because, I remember having conversations way back when about, 50p on the pound, 60p on the pound, 70p on the pound. And, in the last few weeks, we've obviously seen, the market get very frothy, a couple of syndicates getting, good value. What's changed in your opinion? Literally, to go off Vogue to on Vogue in literally a few months.
Nothing's changed, is it?
No.
I told you at the start of the year, the back end of last year, this would come. It's not because I'm a visionary, but the industry, for those that are in the world of PLC, typically want growth, and the results in the industry have been stellar in the main. And there are, it's people say there's 10 businesses that are up for sale. No, it isn't 10. There's a universe of industries or businesses in our sector that are up for sale. It's just a matter of price. I was at Wilcox Johnson Higgins, that was a partnership, couldn't be sold. Guess what? It got sold. I found out standing at the luggage rack at Heathrow Airport. I've been there 8 months.
That was a long wait for a suitcase.
But it's very difficult to if the industry was to give back capital at a significant rate, and by that I don't mean, whether I'm talking about share buybacks, that's not the point, i.e. returning special dividends to the shareholders, monies that you simply don't want to use, we'd be a much simpler business, wouldn't we? But shareholders simply don't want the money back in the main. The street wants growth. Of course, always wants profitable growth.
Yeah. Always needs to find alpha.
And if you are in a world where we are entering of, there isn't significant economic growth in the wider world, and we'll wait and see if, don't want to get into politics, but if Trump is, if the economy is booming the way he says it is or not, time will tell. A lot of the Western worlds are struggling, as we know. So it's hard to see where organic growth comes from. There will be niche businesses and, as you've mentioned, specialisms that will expand. But when you look at $50-60 billion of cash flowing into the industry and profit potentially at the end of reinsurance at the end of this year, it's a big number. So told you that in probably this time last year and Q1 of this year.
Yeah.
And the market will do what the market does. So I expect acquisitions to continue. I don't want to get into specific balance sheets, but there is money awash everywhere, and cash on the balance sheet is a drainer of return. So in all likelihood, I see this continuing. And, they've all done, Clujo's done a fantastic job at Aspen. I obviously knew that business in my prior life, same with Inigo. Their acquirer is interesting. It's a mortgage company. So again, it just shows the
Diversity.
The breadth and value of diversity into capital. It won't necessarily be traditional industry money.
Okay, so moving on slightly and looking forward, slightly back but forward. You was, at the, running a huge business in Guy Carpenter and, on the reinsurance broking side. Can you describe what you learned, kind of moving over into the underwriting leadership side? What surprised you?
There's way more process checks and balances in the underwriting platforms than brokerage firms. The role in the ecosystem are just as important. So it's not a criticism of my prior life. The transfer of risk from a broker's perspective, and this is slightly unfair, but and I don't mean it to be, but you're in the business of sales, execution, and then the managing of a relationship for the rest of the year, and slightly limiting the scope of it, because extraordinary amounts of work goes on behind the scenes. But as a risk carrier, you're not only accepting the risk, you're wearing it for 12 months. And
or longer in a lot of lines of business.
Depending on lines of business, you're right. So the roll-up of that, the data capture, the constant evolution of how we look at our portfolio mix, and I'm sure many do the same. So again, I don't want to be assuming we're doing anything, but from our perspective, which is all I'll talk about, we look at pro formas, we play around with those pro formas, we try and understand that sort of evolution from pro forma, the data that's captured to get that, it's how those exposures roll up from a balance sheet perspective, our returns, our net tangible assets, the way we look at it, what that does to our reinsurance partners. We have relatively small balance sheet, and our partnerships with our reinsurers is key. We treat them in the same way we would our own capital suppliers. So I think there is extraordinary amount of reporting from a Lloyd's perspective, which obviously brokers are ring-fenced from. Is that a surprise to me? Probably a little bit. It's not being because I've not known it, so I guess that's why it's a shock. But that constant evolution and road testing of portfolios, the returns, we look at that, weekly, it's rolled up monthly, supplied to our partners on a sort of, not quite quarterly, but certainly twice a year basis, and a rigorous checking, and then also a lot more rigor around losses, because you're sure as hell going to have them. In the broking world, when you lose an account, I used to be a bit flippant with this, not because I like losing accounts, but because the excuses that got rolled up were always the same. James Potter's daughter married the reinsurance buyer. That's the reason we lost it. Whatever, right? When you have losses in the underwriting world, it is an immediacy of what is the loss, which is quite extraordinary when you might be a day, 2 days in. And all losses are, we're in a very complex world, aren't we? So that's been interesting to watch. But then understanding what you've learned from it. Would you do it again? Are those bets the right bet? I think because we are so, as I'm sure many others are, rigorous about where we deploy our aggregate and why we deploy it, the freight we get for that, the risk we sell on and the risk we take, we haven't had too many things where we look at and go, where did that come from? But they are overlapping skills, but it's vastly different. Vastly different.
On that,
part of the intrigue for me.
Yeah.
So I suppose on that kind of train around, you moved into underwriting. You talked a lot about the industry.
Underwriting platform. They don't allow me to underwrite. Probably a very good thing.
Fair distinction. Talked a lot about the culture of insurance being very people driven. We're in a massively evolving situation around technology at the moment. Everyone's talking about generative AI, potential implications in replacement of jobs. Do you have a view for the next 10 years in terms of, what the future underwriter or broker will look like, and what type of people we should be trying to attract into the industry? What's your kind of prediction for how we will trade in 10 years, and what role will those emerging technologies have?
We'll start with the premise that AI is going to transform the world in a way that the internet will look like a kid's dollhouse. It will be, we're currently in the opening sort of 100 metres of a 1,500 metre race. But probably once you get past 400 metres, the rest is a sprint. So it will be massively transformational. I think it's going to have, from a business perspective, we'll come back to it, but it's going to have an incredible sociological society change in the way we live. Not sure necessarily many people are getting their heads around that yet. We'll see. It will create opportunities that don't exist today, which is the excitement. Whether those opportunities from a workforce perspective are greater than the losses that the industry or all industries will face as a consequence of AI, time will tell. Which is why I made the comment about I think it's going to have a massive effect on societies. But with regards to our business, the collection of data, the understanding of data and how that is translated and allows you to make better decisions, understand the risk framework, it's going to be at a level that we don't clearly have. Contract wordings, this industry is awash with, we talk about transferring risk that looks the same, but we seem to have 15, 20, sometimes more different wordings to pass that same risk around the market. And then after losses, scratch our heads as to why, we can't quite get our heads around the complexity of it. So I think AI will run from through the entire gamut of this industry. In many ways, will make it simpler. The ability to get answers in minutes that would have taken, even in today's world, maybe 10 hours, maybe a day to run, will make the pace of change and the speed of execution much quicker. It's super exciting, but it does worry me. I like to think I'm a caring person, and you look at, we were talking about earlier about kids coming in the industry. It's like, So your point, will the talent change? Yes and no. Yes, because you will need absolute expertise and the requirements for people to understand that technology. But I go back to the framing of teams. You're just adding a member to a team that will make that team better. It doesn't mean that everybody else's skill set's eviscerated. You are still going to require businesses to interface with each other. They'll just have better data.
Yeah.
And some will make decisions based on that data, and they'll get them right sometimes, and they'll get them wrong sometimes. There's nothing that obvious.
If
they
it's
don't
not
know where the wind's going to blow,
Nah.
and they won't know where the ground's going to shake. Right? But you'll make better and more intelligent decisions for sure.
Do you think when we haven't seen massive involvement of the huge players in technology really dabble in insurance much, other than I think Amazon do a bit, don't they? I mean, what do you with the way AI is going, ingestion of data, etc. It does feel at some point like one of the big tech firms could hugely change our industry if they decided to play. Is that something you foresee? Is that a massive threat? What's your thoughts on that?
We've spoken about it as an industry probably for, or certainly in my old life at the board, that inherent threat exists. At some point you let the barbarians through the gate. I don't mean that to be rude, that they're terrible people. Surprised it hasn't happened already. It will, of course, and people want to do business with brands and people they trust. And I won't get into individual names of companies, but the branding of these companies, they have inherent trust in the public, rightly or wrongly, right? People trust the brand. If they trust the brand, selling to people's pretty easy. Whether you can translate complex risks in that our industry deals with on a daily basis through the some of these brands, I doubt at the moment. They'll still require paper unless they put that on their own balance sheet, which I suspect if they do that they won't like for very long. So I think that threat is there, or I won't call it threat. That evolution is there. I'm surprised it hasn't happened now. To be honest, maybe AI makes that the last iteration. But if you look at relatively simple, whether that's your day-to-day insurance that is bought for SMEs, for motor, homeowners, you can see these things being, but with one caveat, the brand is everything, and if you don't pay losses, right, and you end up litigating in the way that professional insurance, reinsurance companies do from time to time, not because they want to avoid claims, but because policy wordings are
you can destroy your brand.
You could destroy a brand very quickly. So that would be my my only warning to them.
Kevin, you mentioned earlier when we started talking about the Gen AI transformation that's about to go on, that we're in the first 100 metres of a 1,500 metre race. One thing that I think has been like a common thought process in our industry is that specialty underwriting, like you mentioned, the complex risks that we transact, that type of underwriting will be insulated from automation, insulated from algorithmic underwriting. Do you think that'll still be true when we're in the last 500 metres of the 1500 metre race?
No, I don't think that's true. I think the collection of data. I mean, look, the thing with CAT, rightly or wrongly, is we've had, you know, decades of collating data from, you know, damageability ratios, looking at the cone, looking at the extremities of hurricanes, learning more about hurricanes, you know, the moisture they're now holding compared to, you know, so denoting climate change, change in risk landscape. The specialty markets in some are much newer. So the level of data that we have at our fingertips by definition is less, because we don't, you know, we haven't got centuries of data to work through. In some of those specialisms, the answer is we've got lots of data, but the models get tested and reevaluated, our industry models. That's why underwriting platforms make their own views of risk, because they are inherently wrong. They'll probably help us understand the systemic nature of risk better. By that I mean, you know, we can understand what a bad hurricane looks like to our portfolio, and we can take views on that. It's a much simpler thing to figure out than necessarily the composition of I'll use cyber as an example, where the systemic loss is...
Where does it stop? Yeah.
Well, understanding systemic risk is, you know, is the thing that our industry's got to figure for, and would COVID, for example, have been something that would have been better thought about through the use of AI back in the day? Maybe. We're all geniuses after the event.
Final question before we move into just on that, because it sort of interests me. All that technology, collection of data, maybe policy wordings, difference in conditions shrunk. Could you foresee a future for insurance where it's truly indexed like a commodity market with a derivatives market and everything like that?
In certain lines, it's possible.
Yeah. Okay.
What would surprise people about you outside of work? You know, what keeps you grounded?
My God. Well, I hope I'm grounded anyway, but look, friends of mine that have nothing to do with this industry, I mean, wouldn't tolerate, you know, the friendships I have with people are, you know, call a spade, right? I mean, so I don't think I'm, at least I hope I'm not fundamentally different with anybody I meet. I said to you earlier, you know, I'm 61 now. I mean, I am who I am, and I try and get it right, and I don't always do that, but it's with the right reason sometimes. When, do you know, you make mistakes, that's part of learning, isn't it? So I don't think it's a bit of a why of evading that, but I think you probably have to ask friends of mine not in the industry.
Well,
and I hope you don't find them.
We've got 3 questions we have to ask, don't we, for everyone who comes on the podcast?
Yeah. Okay. So question 1: if you could choose any restaurant, should we go in the city or London?
I think London.
Any restaurant in London, what would it be, and what would you order?
I like Kerridge's in the Corinthian Hotel. Novikov's cool.
Nice, that's a good recommendation.
So I'll stop there.
If you could go for lunch with anybody, dead or alive, who are you taking?
Muhammad Ali and my mum and dad.
Nice. And then last one then, so given everything we've talked about, if you were starting your career tomorrow, what one piece of advice would you give yourself?
Listen.
Very good. Thank you so much for giving us the time. Pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
No,
and thanks for your friendship as well.
No, and you. Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of Virtual Lunch.
Subscribe now so you don't miss an episode.
We'll be back next week. Same time, same table. See you then.